Welcome to this Gemini 101, in which I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Google's Gemini AI model and the background of what it does, how you can use it, and how to weigh it up compared to the other models that you might be using. So, silly question, who are Google? Of course, we all know them as the leading search provider and big provider of cloud platforms. But the question that everyone has been asking over the last year or so is, did they miss the boat on AI? A company with huge resources and huge access to data that drives AI. And so why have they been relatively late to the party? They did have a model called Google Bard that very few people were aware of. And then earlier in February 2024, that was rebranded as Google Gemini, and it's really the focus of their AI efforts. And so Gemini is the sort of collective name for their AI models. And within that, you'll come across some of these cryptic names, 2.0 Flash, 2.0 Flash Thinking Experimental, or their deep research models. And I'll show you a little bit about how you can access them as we move through this session. But ultimately, the bigger the number, the newer and more advanced the model is. Why it's important to be aware of Google Gemini is that back in 2023, you can see the dark blue OpenAI, ChatGPT had over 50% of the enterprise use cases. But in 2024, OpenAI's dominance starts to diminish as others, such as Anthropic, the open source tools Llama from Meta, and then Google, which is this sort of purple or maroon color, going from 7% to 12%. And as we will see as we go through, increasingly, this is the power of distribution. If you already have a working relationship with your potential customers, then it can be much easier for them to onboard into your products. So if you are a current Google Workspace customer, then stay tuned because it's going to become important for you. So how do you access Gemini? Well, if you're an individual, then you can just go to gemini.google.com and you can sign up for a free account, and you can start to access that on your phone or on the web. If you want, you can then upgrade if you're in a qualifying country, which is a large number of countries, but you can then get access to Gemini Advanced via what's called a Google One AI premium subscription, which is in the order of $20. And that gives you a lot more than just Google Gemini Advanced. It gives you access to some other tools as well as 2 terabytes of storage, but that gives you access to Gemini Advanced. If you are a company and you have got a Google Workspace account, and you would know that by your company uses Gmail and Google Docs and Sheets and so on within your organization, then if you're on one of these licenses, then you get Gemini automatically as part of your license. And so speak to your Google admin and they'll be able to tell you whether you're on one of those licenses. If you're on some of the higher licenses, starting from business standard and upwards, then you're automatically going to get Gemini Advanced as part of your Google Workspace license. That is pretty fresh out of the gates. That's only happened over the last 3 or 4 weeks or so. I'm recording this in February 2025. And so pay attention as to whether you've A, got one of those, and B, whether it's been activated and rolled out by your Google admin. And then the other way that you can access Gemini is via their APIs, for if you're a developer building tools, and we'll touch on that in a moment as well. So what's the difference between Gemini and Gemini Advanced? We using the same models. Is this a model? Is this a license? Well, with Gemini, the core Gemini that you're going to get, then you have a context window of 32,000 tokens, and that basically accounts for how much context, how much information you can give and receive from the model at any one time. When you're on Gemini Advanced, you dramatically increase the amount of context that you can provide and Gemini can handle. And the equivalent here of this 1 million context window is being able to provide 1,500 pages of text as part of your prompt or the background. So imagine being able to give Gemini 4, 5, 6 books worth of information about a specific topic as you're asking questions. Gemini Advanced will also give you access to some of the newer models. It'll give you access to deep research, which we'll touch on in a minute, and also GEMS, which we will touch on in a minute. How do you access and use Gemini? Well, the primary route is going to be through the web, through your browser typically. Then they have got a mobile app. And then also, if you're a developer, you're going to access it via the API. So for the web, you're just going to go as you would normally log in to Google. You're going to go to search, you're going to go to Gmail, you're going to go to Docs. And at the top right, you're going to see that 9-box grid. And within that, you're going to be able to select Gemini. You can, of course, bookmark that. And then you can just start chatting with Gemini in a typical chat format. Within the web, you're then going to be able to select one of those models. So the 2.0 Flash is the typical model that you're going to be using. This is your sort of ChatGPT or Claude equivalent. And then you're going to see some of these reasoning models like the Flash Thinking Experimental. And then down at the bottom, the 1.5 Pro with deep research, which is that more in-depth research that you're going to find. If you're on mobile, download the Gemini app, and then you are able to log in either if you're on a personal account, log into your personal Gemini or Gemini Advanced, or if you're on Google Workspace, you will also be able to log in to your Gemini account there linked to work. You can just talk to it. You can just type in, add photos, add things from your camera roll as you'd expect to. But also you can tick or tap this going live button down at the right. And then you move into a chat session where you're literally just talking. And I've found this quite useful in testing of just having this live and sat next to me on my desk whilst I'm doing some work, and almost having it as a bit of a co-creator as I'm doing work. So definitely test that out. If you're a developer, then you have access to all of the Gemini models through their API. And a great place to start with this is the Google AI Studio. And you don't need to be a developer to play around with this. So just Google AI Studio, and you'll get to go to that. You'll see this screen. What you're able to do here is actually practice more complex prompts. So on the right-hand side, you can see you can choose the model. Here we've got Gemini 2.0 Flash, so you can choose, and that has some of the future or up-and-coming models that you can play around with. Below that, you can see the 1 million token context that you can have. And there you can play around with some of the advanced settings for your prompts. Once you've created an amazing prompt, you can then get the code for that, and either, if you're a developer yourself, implement that into your application, or if you're not a developer, you could start to share that with your development team or your external agency. Here is a prompt that we want to use. Now let's take a look at some Gemini tips and tricks. There's just 3 that I'm really going to show you here. One is about extensions, one is about saved info, and one is about gems. And if we think about Claude or ChatGPT, or if you've watched any of those videos, then it's very much the similar kinds of things. They're just named a different thing. Extensions would be integrations into other systems. Saved info might be your memory or custom instructions. And gems would be the equivalent of a project in ChatGPT or Claude. So firstly, extensions. One of the reasons why Google has got an advantage here, especially if you're a Google Workspace customer, is that it already has an understanding of the context that you have got in terms of your email, your docs, anything that you've got in your calendar. And therefore, when you're asking questions of it, it can use that. How should I plan my week? what was the latest thing that Bob sent to me? You can start to ask these questions, and Google has got that context. So extensions, when you're in your Gemini advanced interface, you're going to be able to tick that and get these extensions. And so that provides context that many of the other providers are not going to have. Saved info. So this is where we can provide Gemini with a little bit more background that we want it to know about us. And so here I might provide a bit of information about, the company that I run, about the customers that we seek to serve, about the technology that we built the platform on. But this could be anything about your target customers. It could be about your role. It could be about your career aspirations. Anything that you want Gemini to build into its discussions with you. The next thing I want to show you is gems. So if you've used Claude projects or ChatGPT projects, then this is Google's version of that. A gem is a project. It is a wrapper for a specific set of repeatable prompts that you might ask. And you're going to find this down on the bottom left of your settings. Now, if you're on Gemini, you won't have access to this, or it will give you a button saying upgrade. If you're on Gemini Advanced, then you'll be able to click Gem Manager, and then this screen will open. And you'll see some pre-made gems, which Google have created, or you can start to create your own gems by clicking that blue button down at the bottom, New Gem. And then you'll come into this screen here. And this is where you're going to define what is it that you want the gem to do. You're going to give it a name. You're going to provide it some instructions. And as always, you should provide as much detail here as possible, and use XML tags to guide the LLM model around your instructions. So within this, behind that screen, I've actually got probably a whole page or two of actual instructions for what I want this account researcher to do. And then I've got knowledge. So here I can add in, as I've done here, Google Slides, but it could be a document. It could be any other files that I've got access to that provides background to this task. Through my Google Drive integration. Now, one thing to note, at the moment, if you're on a Google Workspace account, you might think, well, I want to be able to create a gem and I want to be able to share that with other members of our team. So if I've created this account researcher, I want to share that with the rest of my sales team. That is not currently available. I'd have to imagine that that's going to come soon, because that's one of the key things about this being integrated into the Google Workspace sort of architecture. The way that you would approach this, I would suggest, would be to create a Google Doc that explains the prompt. It explains the documents that you want to provide as knowledge, and then you're just providing that as a prompt library or a gem library, where you're giving people the ability to create these things independently in their own accounts. If you're a Google Workspace customer, you will also start to get access to a number of pre-made gems. There are 6 of them that they've rolled out: marketing insights, a sales pitch ideator, a hiring consultant, and so on. And these really are just Google providing you with those custom instructions in the background. Use them for some inspiration, but I would imagine very quickly, actually, you want this to be have the context of your company, of your product, of your target ideal customer profile. And so your own gems are going to provide you with a much better output. So let me quickly dive over, and we'll take a look at Gemini itself. Okay, so here we are in Google Gemini, and in my case, Gemini Advanced, which is accessed, as you can see here, gemini.google.com, and then you're going to be able to log in. There's not too much to show, really. Down at the bottom here, we've got the settings, which is where we've got saved info and extensions that I mentioned a minute ago. We've got your Gem Manager here. And when we click on that, we're going to have the pre-made gems from Google, and then also your own gems. And if I come here to edit, you can see here we've got the name of the gem. We've got the instructions that I've added in here about how I want this to act as a to provide me with a workshop. You should act as a mentor and a coach, guiding the account executive through this process rather than just providing them with the answer. So that's what I've asked for, is for run like a workshop. Here I've attached a couple of documents that are in my Google Drive. And then if I go back to using this gem, then I can say here, please can you help me, let me allow my microphone. Please can you help me research Rolls-Royce as a potential account. And so it's using the custom gem. Sure, I can help you with that. Please, can you remind me of the name of the person that you're targeting at Rolls-Royce? And this is because I had asked in that gem, this is what I want you to do, is to ask me these things and roll me through that process. So that's a gem. It's quite a sort of personalized wrapper around a set of repeatable tasks. The only other thing that I would just show you here is the Google AI Studio, aistudio.google.com. And here is where, if you're a developer or you're working alongside developers, you can start to build out more custom prompts. On the right here, you can choose which model, and you're going to get access to some of the preview models that are coming out. You are going to be able to put some more detailed tools and settings for your prompts. And having done that, you're then going to be able to get the code, which you can then share with your development team. So this is a good way if you're embedding Gemini into your applications, either for your internal use or for customers. Then come and play at AI Studio, and it's totally free, and you get access to all of the new models as well. Now, one of the other features that Google provides as part of the Gemini license is called Deep Research. And so you'll get that through your toggle here, and then going to Deep Research. And this is where Google really leverages all of the different sources it has available to it by running the biggest search engine. So here is an example where I put in quite a long prompt. I want you to analyze Glencore. It's a big sort of mining and commodities trading organization. I want you to analyze their artificial intelligence and digital transformation initiatives focused on all of these areas, because I want to understand a little bit about how they're approaching AI, for example. So what Deep Research does is actually goes away and runs quite a detailed search. And so I'm just going to let that run, and then I'll come back to you once that is completed. Okay, so that has now provided a plan. Here's the plan I put together. Let me know if you need any changes. I'm going to research websites to analyze their AI and digital transformation initiatives. I'm then going to analyze the results, and I'm going to create the report. Okay, let's go. And here Google goes, starting the research. And I will just pause again, and I'll come back once this is completed. Okay, I'm resuming. There was about 10 minutes that Deep Research was running there. And so now I have got this report, Glencore's AI and digital transformation initiatives, executive summary, their digital transformation journey, the investments that they've made in predictive maintenance, transforming the copper supply chain, implementation across their different business units, and organizational readiness, culture, comparison. Now I need to verify this for my own benefits, but there we've got a very detailed report that might have taken an individual human weeks to create. And what has Google used for that? Well, it's researched 119 different websites. That is both gone and found, read, and then summarized. And so we can see the huge range of this. And so to be able to do that in just 10 minutes as part of your Google Workspace license is just a huge benefit. So definitely get started with that, and we can turn that straight into a doc that we can play with. So with that, I'm going to hand you back to the presentation and we can wrap up this session. So let's wrap up this session by quickly having a chat about privacy and governance, which for any AI platform is important, but for Google even more so, seeing as they have got so much access to our data through our usage of Gmail, Calendar, Docs, and everything that we do on search. So it's important for us to understand how and when the prompts and the information we put into Gemini is going to be used. And I have to say, it's confusing, it's complicated, because there are so many different Google services and different ways of accessing Gemini that it is not as simple as it might be for a Claude or for ChatGPT. So I'll try and make my best way of explaining it for you. If you are on a Gemini for Google One, this is a kind of a personal account, then the default is to train. As it says in its privacy documentation, Google uses this data, as in your prompts and stuff that you upload, to provide, improve, and develop Google products. Now, if you are getting Gemini through work, through a Google Workspace account, then the default is not to train. So submissions are not used to train models and are never reviewed by humans. And this is pretty consistent with the other providers. If you are on a free or even a personal account, we will train. If you're on a corporate account, then we will not train. So you should definitely think about that balance. Then it gets a bit more confusing. So if you're on a personal account, then you can opt out of having Gemini trained on your submissions. And you do that by changing a toggle on your Gemini apps activity, and it provides you with a link to that. To stop future conversations from being reviewed or used to improve our technologies, turn off Gemini apps activity. Well, when I go to that in my paid Gemini Advanced account, you can see the turn off button is grayed out. And when I try and click on it, it says you're not able to do that on your account. So I'm not quite sure how that plays out. If you are on a Gemini for Google Workspace account and you're having this provided by work, a couple of things that I'd point out in this table. Firstly, top left, data access. Gemini does not access workspace content that you don't have permission to access. So this is important to know. When you are using Gemini and you're adding in Google Docs or Google Slides or Sheets, you're only able to add in things that you have got access to, whether you created them or they've been shared with you. That's important because the opposite is also true. Other people in your Google Workspace organization are not able to access any of your documents in their Gemini searches. So that privacy is maintained. The second one, just down below that, is that Gemini will not use your content, your prompt, or your generated response to train or improve Gemini models. So as with so many of these providers, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Anthropic, or in this case, Google, if you're on a paid corporate account, you're going to get the highest level of privacy and security controls. So my considerations as we wrap up. Distribution is a very powerful force. As we've seen over the years with companies like Microsoft, if you own the distribution, then it is much easier to push your new products down to those individuals. And therefore, if you are an existing Google Workspace customer, you've probably got access to Gemini or Gemini Advanced already, and therefore it makes sense to at least test it out and roll it out to your team because you've got access to it. That said, for me, Gemini is not yet my go-to model. I've not found the responses to be up to that I'm getting through Claude, which is my go-to, or ChatGPT. Indeed, when I was putting this video together, I was asking Gemini to help me structure the topics and the content. And actually, I ended up using Grok 3 because Grok 3 was up to date and Gemini was giving me out-of-date information and wasn't specific enough in its responses. That said, you should be testing all new models against your most challenging problems. So take a look at that deep research, take a look at the experimental thinking models, and test some of the most challenging issues that your company or industry is facing against those. Use the AI Studio to get free access to their new models that aren't even in Gemini Advanced yet. If you want more information, I've provided some links here. It's a bit challenging because Google has got so much in terms of different products that you can find different bits of information on different sites. Probably the best is just to Google Gemini licensing or Google Gemini privacy notice, Google for Workspace, Google Workspace and Gemini, and you'll come up with various bits of information. With that, I hope that was useful. If you've got access to Gemini, either personally or through work, test it out and let me know how it compares with the other models that you're using.